Okay, namaskar everybody, and welcome to another Wednesday meditation session. Nice to be with you today. I hope all is going well with you and you're ready for some self-exploration. So then today we're looking at the Kamamaya kosha. We're still in that what's called crude or sensory layer of the mind. And one way that we can improve the quality of the Kamamaya kosha is with the practice of spiritual ethics. So today we're looking at ethics and its ability to purify the human being. So what do we mean when we say purify? Like what is purity? If we look at the dictionary, we find definitions like this. So pure gold, for example, is gold without any other metal in it. There's no iron in it. There's no silver in it. It's just gold. So that's one definition of purity. It's that which is unpolluted, if you will, by anything else. So it maintains its sanctity. If one looks at water, then pure water is water that doesn't have any dirt or dust in it, any pollutants in it. So we would say that spring water is pure water. Another way of looking at the word pure is in terms of sound. So when we talk about a pure note of music, we talk about a note that's in tune. So I think we can apply this to the human being when we are in tune with life, in tune with other creatures, other human beings around us, in tune with the grand rhythms of the universe, then maybe we're moving towards a state of purity. And when we find more of our original nature, when we can dive deep within and feel this magical sense of being inside, then perhaps we can also use the word pure to describe us. Christopher Wallace, he was a great tantric scholar, and he wrote the book Tantra Illuminated, which is an excellent book actually on Kashmiri Tantra in particular. He addresses this issue of purity, and he talks about three forms of impurity. So there's the impurity of individuality, the impurity of differentiation, and the impurity of action. So let's start with the impurity of individuality. I don't know whether you've ever thought, oh, my life is in vain, my life is useless, I'm so small and meager, so insignificant, what can I possibly do to make any change? When we see ourselves as isolated individuals, then obviously we can have those feelings of despondency, of inadequacy, of feeling that life is just meaningless. I mean, that there's nothing I can do. And this is the challenge of this type of impurity, where we feel there's no way forwards. And when people, I guess, buy into the social construct that's around us, they can often fall into this trap of just getting into the rat race and not really expressing their deep spiritual side. I remember sitting one time on a double-decker bus in London, And I was looking out at the world. I was only 16 at the time, looking out at the world, and I was seeing this rat race, people running around in the streets of London. And I was thinking at one point, like, what is the point? This can't be the point, what I was seeing through the bus window. There's got to be something more. So thankfully, we have these moments of epiphany, of realization, when we understand, wait a minute, this isn't everything that is. There has to be something deeper. I mean, to be on planet Earth in this magical universe suggests that there's something very deep to explore. So then this is when we start to become purer, if you like, when we expand our sense of individuality. We understand that we are but expressions of this intelligent universe, like all the other expressions around us. We have a common source. Now, the ethical way, on our path at least, in which we try to support this process of coming to full fruition, as feeling that one is part of a web of cosmic life, is what's called Ishvara Pranidhana in Sanskrit, which is basically meditation. Ishvara is the supreme consciousness, that which holds everything. And Pranidhana is to take shelter in. So we have processes of meditation whereby we expand the sense of self to understand that indeed I am something greater expressing itself through me. So this is one aspect of the purification process, to overcome the limits of, excuse me, a feeling of inadequate individuality. The second thing that Wallace talks about is the impurity of differentiation. Me versus the other, us versus them. And of course, this stems from the sense of individuality. So when people feel insecure, when people feel their lives are meaningless, they often find a tribe, if you will, and then they label their tribe as being the superior tribe, and the other tribe is inadequate. And they may even take action to try to minimize the potency of the other tribe. So we become very cruel as human beings in these sorts of situations. I was reading the other day about the cattle industry, the beef industry, and how cows, which are such beautiful, sensitive, compassionate beings, are labeled as production units. They produce our beef. And so see this type of dichotomy in action, the us versus the them, right? The them in this case is a sentient being, a cow, which is degraded to being described as a production unit. So this is the danger of this impurity, which has actually polluted the human mind to a great extent. That I'm different from the other, I'm better than the other, I have to suppress the other in order to thrive. So the ethical principle we have to overcome this is called Brahmacharya. Brahma is supreme consciousness. Supreme consciousness has a number of words to describe it in Sanskrit. And acharya is basically to move through life, seeing that everything is an expression of supreme consciousness. The process of becoming pure is not always so easy. If one wants to clean clothes, they have to be, well, when I was living in India, I was washing my clothes in a river, and so you bash the clothes against a rock. You know, it's a pretty rough process of cleansing. So similarly, if we do aspire to purify ourselves, then we have to apply ourselves with some effort. So then with this particular practice of yoga ethics, spiritual ethics, we are endeavoring to see that everything, and this means everything, it means the things we like and the things we don't like, the people we like and the people we don't like, everything is an expression of the one consciousness. And until we can realize that, it's going to be very hard to overcome the pain that we cause as human beings, one to the other. In Catholicism, they also do this in a slightly different way, but they see the other as an expression of God. And so when you serve the other, you serve God. And I remember in India, I was working with the Mother Teresa organization for a time as a volunteer. We were helping those people who were seriously mentally disabled to the extent they couldn't really take care of themselves. So we had to take them to the toilet, we had to wipe their backside, we had to brush their teeth, we had to cut their nails. I mean, the first 2 or 3 days was stomach churning for me. But I tried to practice this, that seeing these people as an expression of the one consciousness. Why should I be averse to people in that situation? It's just the way that the universe is expressing itself through them. It's chosen a different way through me and a different way through them. As a compassionate being, I should also serve them as I would serve anybody. So this takes a little work. Let me correct that. It takes a lot of work to really, truly feel compassion, even for the enemy. Just the other day, I heard about somebody who had a stroke, and this person hurt me a lot in the past. I won't go into the details, but my initial reaction was, oh, this is a just reward, the stroke. And I had to catch myself, because that is an attitude of differentiation, that the other's different from me, the other hurt me, so the other then has to be punished. So I had to readjust my mind in order to reach out compassionately. One time my guru challenged me with this, and he was saying basically that your enemy is dying. Will you help him? And then he said, this enemy would also like to destroy your organization were he able. Will you still help him? And I said yes. I think I said yes, in part because I knew that was the answer he wanted. But he said, yeah, exactly. I mean, even when your enemy is in trouble, you help out as a humanitarian. So we talk very glibly, right, about being spiritual, about being pure, but actually it takes a lot of work. So the third impurity then in Kashmiri Tantra is the impurity of action, which leads from this feeling of being a weak individual. So here we've already discussed a little bit the energies of attraction and aversion. So often when people are subjected to the impurity of action, they act from crude attraction and crude aversion. So in other words, when it comes to attraction, I'm attracted to everything that's going to make me happy. It doesn't matter what happens to the planet, what happens to other individuals, what happens to those cows we're calling production units. So long as I'm happy, then it's okay. And similarly, with the force of aversion, that if anything makes me unhappy, I don't want it in my life. Whatever it may be, I'm going to push it away, I'm going to destroy it, I'm going to annihilate it. It has no place in my orbit. And we see this a lot in the world today also, even in ourselves. Obviously, again, this is something that takes lifetimes to overcome. But it leads to a lot of suffering. I mean, I don't know whether you've ever met a selfish, self-centered person who's happy, who's at peace, who's fulfilled. Have you ever met a narcissistic person who's at peace? No. And so then we have a lot of ethical principles to help us with this. And I'm not going to go through them in much detail. Number one, we don't have time, but this can be found all over the internet. But there's ahimsa, which is not causing harm to anybody, even in the way we think, because obviously action comes from thought. Satya is the use of words with the spirit of benevolence. So one's word should enable the potential in somebody to emerge. Ashteya is not stealing. So this is not in a simple way of not taking something that belongs to somebody else, but even not stealing emotionally or psychologically. So then we should not steal somebody's voice. We should not steal somebody's dream. We should not steal somebody's potential, which society does in a big way. Apahigraha is understanding what are my basic needs and being content with those needs and not over-accumulation. So in this process of purification, we're looking at both the outer aspect and the inner aspect. So the outer aspect is conduct. And those points I just spoke about guide us in refining or purifying, if you will, our conduct. So we are truly assets for the planet, for other people, and ourselves. And then there's the inner aspect, which could be described as character. And this takes a little bit more work. To some extent, conduct is the result of character. How I present myself into the world is the result of my inner self. And so that inner self also needs a lot of work. And these are aspects of self that we're working on side by side. We're continuously working on conduct and continuously working on character. And in the process, we become well-rounded spiritual beings. So when it comes to character, there are other principles. So one is called shaucha, which is the ability to cleanse oneself, starting with the mind, to make sure that the thoughts are compassionate for self and the other. We practice santosha, which is contentment, being happy with what is right now. And there's a fundamental aspect of Tantra that's important here. On some paths, there's an end goal, right? That after life, then there'll be heaven, if you will. It'll all be worth it in the end. Or some even believe that there's going to be a second coming and everything on the planet will be transformed. So there's this hope that it's always going to be better. There's this hope that there's an end point where I'm going to be transformed to the place we call heaven. But Tantra would say that actually, no, it's here, it's right now. One doesn't have to delay the bliss. One doesn't have to expectantly wait for a far off second coming. That it is right now. The only thing that's preventing us from realizing what is right now is these impurities that we've been discussing so far. So at any moment, one can have realization. At any moment, one can have epiphany. At any moment, one can feel bliss. So then santosha is understanding that it's here. It's right now. And obviously, when we think about the now and sanctify the now, like dive into the now to find the beauty within the now, then everything else, past and future, is going to fall into place. Our future, to some extent, is determined by the quality of how we deal with the now. Another important aspect of character building is study. So to study all kinds of wisdom teachings, to study other human beings, to study oneself, and to reflect, to use the faculty of discernment and reflection, contemplation we've been given in order to continuously support ourselves, if you will, by analyzing ourselves.